Do you have a signature dance move? Sure you do. We all do. You see, there are certain perceptions and behaviors that just feel natural to us as individuals, as part of our family, our communities, our cultures. These are things that we learned maybe from our parents or on the playground or in our efforts to improve ourselves over time. These are the things that we can't help doing again and again if we don't pay attention, and sometimes even if we do. Fractals are special patterns in nature. They involve the same kinds of things happening over and over again in big ways and small ways in open systems, usually because there's some hidden rule being applied underneath the surface. You may know about fractals from fractal geometry, or maybe you've heard the term in conjunction with biology or physics. Today, I will challenge you to think about fractals in a different context, our social systems, which is to say our families, our communities, our workplaces, our schools. You see, I like to think of fractals as the signature dance moves of open systems of all kinds. And it's those signature dance moves of society and the world that really interest me. You know, the ones you do when you're dancing alone in your room and nobody's watching, or at the club with your friends, or maybe at weddings when grandma's looking. And even when we try to play it cool, they sneak out, don't they? Albert Einstein told us that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Winston Churchill warned us that those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it, and sometimes we don't really want that mulligan, do we? A do-over is not always a good thing. There are many wise people who've warned us about this, and yet I would bet everybody in this room has had this experience where we say, oh, I did it again. Why does that keep happening? Yogi Berra would have said it's like deja vu all over again. We make the same mistakes in life and in work over and over again. We fail to see it coming when something obvious and inevitable happens. I'll give you an example. Knock, knock.
There.
Banana.
Banana food.
Knock, knock.
There.
Banana.
Banana food.
Knock, knock.
There.
Banana.
Banana food.
Knock, knock.
There.
Orange. Aren't you glad I quit saying banana? This joke is annoying. This joke is repetitive. But you see, it's more sinister than that. As a young child, I tormented my family for months on end with this joke. Amazingly, they did not kill me. I taught this joke to my children. They were not so easily amused, thankfully, and it only lasted a few weeks. But someday, when I have the good fortune to be a grandma, this joke is going to come around again. This is a multi-generational bad joke. It's cursed my family for at least 3 generations. There is repetition in the joke, repetition of the joke, repetition of the experience of mischievous children tormenting their elders with it. And the sad, sad truth is that at least 1 or 2 of you will go home today and tell this joke to some unsuspecting toddler and spread the fractal of banana madness even further. What if you could spot social patterns that are likely to spread across the generations? What I'm suggesting is easy, but you may have to change your focus a little bit. You see, you have to focus a little bit less on objects and a little bit more on processes to understand the patterns unfolding in the change that's all around us. Our world is very complex these days. With globalism, telecommunications, the power of computers, it's as if there's this fast-moving river of change where social and material things, people, events, are all tied up in ways that are very hard to make sense of and navigate as human beings. So how do we make sense of this? First, you have to accept that change is inevitable. It's part of the deal. The only constant in our world today is change. Second, once you've accepted it, once you've wrapped your head around that change thing, then you can begin to adjust your gaze. Zoom in, zoom out. Notice the patterns in the change that's all around you, the ones that happen again and again in big and small ways, those fractals, those signature dance moves of the world. I'll use an example that appeals to most of us. Does anyone in this room like money? Okay, a few of you. Do you recognize this? Those of you who recognized it, you recognized it how? Just see the patterns? The same kinds of things happen in big and small ways. Whether I look at a stock chart for an hour, a week, 5 years, I'm going to see the same patterns repeating, right? Those same bumps and squiggles. They're fractals. And the timing and amplitude can be a little bit difficult to figure out, or we'd all be home counting our money right now. But these bumps and squiggles are the signature dance moves of the marketplace. Did you know money could dance? Groups of people have their signature dance moves too. We make fractals. Whether I pay attention to how groups of people organize themselves, or if I listen to the stories that they tell, I can begin to get a feeling for where their hearts are. What hidden rules are we following? The principles that they hold dear, the ones that we're acting on, even if we're not aware of it. My colleagues and I have uncovered patterns of collaboration, patterns of communication, patterns of friendliness, patterns of elitism, patterns of awareness. There are a lot of wonderful scholars working in complexity these days, but for my part, I'd like to tell you a little story about how this idea took a hold of me. It was 2009, and I was going back to school. I'd been accepted to a doctoral program, and I was pretty excited, but I was scared to death. You see, I had this feeling I might be in over my head just a little bit. So I did what many of us do, and I carted myself off to the East Library and got big stacks of books on CD to listen to in my car on the way to work. The topic didn't matter, I just had to get smarter and fast. So one particular morning, I was listening to a book, and the narrator was talking about fractals in nature. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, but I'm going to study management. And just as I pulled into my parking space, went to pull my keys out of the ignition and go sit in my gray cubicle, anybody got one of those? The author began talking about trees. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Organization charts, not all, but many organization charts are tree diagrams. Well, yeah. Why this deceptively simple, obvious realization mattered, though, is that underneath it there was a deeper truth. You see, man is part of nature, even when he's trying with all of his might not to be. When we try to draw lines on a chart and decide who's allowed to talk to whom and how resources will flow in the most contrived and controlled way possible, we're still copying patterns from nature. You see, we're not studying nature from some safe distance. No, we're part of that dance, every bit as much as the flowers and the trees are. If I pay attention to a leaf on just about any tree, notice how the main vein comes up the center of the leaf, how the smaller veins come off to the sides, and then back up. Notice how the leaves come off of the twigs, how the twigs come off of the branches, how the branches come off of the trunk. You'll notice the same kinds of patterns repeating in big and small ways. Congratulations, you have spotted this tree's signature dance move. That's its fractal. So if there's extra water, not enough water, fertilizer, wind, this tree will continue to try and grow in a way that lives out its fractal, its signature dance move. Now, the skeptics in the audience are saying, trees are not people, lady. And that's where this gets really exciting. You see, the tree has no choice, but you and I, we can become self-aware. We can begin to spot our own patterns, learn our own signature dance moves and those of the social systems that we're a part of. And once you spot the patterns, you have more choices. You can choose to create patterns on purpose, your own positive fractals. You can create positive patterns that echo throughout the world, that don't just make you a better person, but maybe they ripple through your family, your community, out into the world where they bump into other people's patterns in really exciting and generative ways. So we can't all change the world. You don't have to be the CEO of a big company or the President of the United States to do it. All you need is that sheet of paper and pencil you were just given. Let's start changing the world by drawing the largest equilateral triangle that you possibly can. I'm not kidding. This is the first step. Now, once you've drawn that triangle, I'm going to give you a rule. This rule is absolute, and you cannot break it no matter what. Perhaps for the rest of your life, you will follow this rule. Every time you see a right side up equilateral triangle, you are bound to draw an upside down triangle in the middle of it, like so. Oh wait, some of you made extra right side up triangles. Why don't you do it again if that was you? And again. And again. You see, we could do this all day long. And some of us would like to, right? So if you do this all day long, you create this beautiful fractal called the Sierpinski gasket, very famous in fractal geometry. Isn't it beautiful? What? You don't like triangles? Everybody loves triangles, am I right? Not you? Well, if you don't like where this is going, change the rules. You see, I'm not holding your pencils and paper. You are. I just claimed to be in charge and gave you a rule. If you don't like where this is going, you have choices. You can choose not to participate like some of those folks over there. You can give the system a nudge in a different direction. You can create your own pattern, a positive pattern that points you in a new direction. Maybe a pattern of compassion and kindness, like Mother Teresa. Or a pattern of nonviolence, like Dr. King started. So here's the challenge. You ready? Start to notice the fractals in the world around you, whether it's a tree in your backyard, or the clouds, or a mountain stream. And when you get comfortable spotting fractals in nature, then turn your attention to human nature. Can you spot the fractals in your family, in your community, your workplace, your school, yourself? And when you see one of these patterns unfolding, ask yourself this question. If this pattern continues, is it good for the world I want to live in and leave for my children? And if the answer is no, for Pete's sake, learn some new moves. Thank you.